Welcome to Dasar. My name is Darshan and I have an awesome podcast guest with me today, Sunil Deshmukh. Today's podcast is about performance, peak performance. How can you be the best at what you do? And that's a combination of purpose, productivity, and performance. And I couldn't find anyone better than Sunil Deshmukh, our podcast guest today. To give you a quick overview, Sunil is a C-suite executive, has been the CEO of various companies across different sectors, across different geographies. He now coaches people. He's an executive coach. He's advising high performers around the world. And so we are going to break down leadership. We are going to break down performance. We are going to break down his own strengths, weaknesses, and just how does he approach overall human performance. So Sunil, I've given a quick overview of who you are. You're also a management accountant. You've done advanced management program from Oxford.
Yep.
And you continue to build certifications on top of what you do. First of all, welcome to Dasar.
Thank you.
So my first question to you, I've been in this leadership development space for about 8 years now. And one of the basic questions is, what is leadership? And how can anyone showcase leadership capability? What really is it?
Thanks. Thank you, Darshan. And it's an interesting question. And a lot of people ask me this question that what's leadership? And we all think leadership is a very complicated thing. According to me, leadership is the very basic and simple thing. A leadership can be very easily defined as a leader is a person who influences or inspires a team for an objective to be achieved over a period of time. So what does it mean is that a leader need to have a vision and he need to have capability to inspire the people who are working with him or around him. And of course, when a leader need to inspire people or achieve the common goal or objective, the change process or the transformation process is expected to happen. And a leader also need to know how to manage the resources, how to create the resources or how to manage the resources so as to achieve the desired objective. That's a very simple way of defining the leadership.
So this is good, a very simple way. An entrepreneur is someone who is extremely resourceful, and being resourceful is also part of being leadership, right? So there's clearly some amount of overlap. But if someone were to showcase good leadership capabilities, right?
Yep.
What would be some indicators of good leadership versus bad leadership?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because capabilities of a leaders, according to me, keep varying over a period of time, right? If you are a particular type of leader today and you have particular capabilities, may not be after 10 years, those things are still working. But coming to the basic thing, the leadership capabilities, the first and foremost is having a vision. Or you started our discussion with a purpose. So vision is a purpose. What's your purpose? Why or what you want to achieve in this company? So vision is the first capability. Second capability, according to me, for a leader to have is obviously motivating the people. How do you motivate the people? And that's the inspiring aspect or the influencing aspect of a leadership. So how do you motivate the people? So motivation is another capability a leader need to possess. Third, again, very, very important is good communication, right? People tend to listen to a person who speaks nicely or who has got a sense of talking. Right? So good communication is also a very important capability of a leader. But I would also add to that, there are so many things, obviously I can keep on discussing this for 10 minutes, but problem solving capacity, that's very, very important. If a leader does not know how to solve a problem, and problem solving is a very, very typical management skill, which you can't learn in a management school or you can't learn in your engineering or any other program. It's by experience. So leader need to have a problem solving capacity. Now, in addition to that, there are various other things like, for example, agility is there, persistence is there, or trust is another very important factor which I always talk about. A leader need to develop the trust. If a leader has not developed the trust, how can his or her followers will look at him or her in a respectable way, or they can accept him as a leader? So these are some of the capabilities of the leadership. We can keep on adding a lot of things, but I think I'll stop here.
No, thanks for being so much on point with regards to leadership capability, leadership building. So let's talk about leading by example. you have been a CEO, you've been in executive positions across geographies, sectors, Singapore, in chemical industry, in fertilizer industry, at McDonald's, and whatnot, right? I mean, the list just goes on in terms of what you've been able to, where you've been able to influence the outcome of not just the company, but the people working under you, right? So maybe very personal question to you is, have you used a strengths based approach, or have you looked at, overcoming the weaknesses? Because this is one of the biggest questions, is that should you double down on your strengths, or should you bring your weakness to a certain level at least? So in your own reflection of the last 30 years of being an executive, of being in a leadership position, what are some of your strengths that have really helped you achieve the success and be a peak performer?
Again, very interesting question, Darshan, because SWOT analysis we all have learned from the very basics of management, but very few people really utilize SWOT analysis for analyzing themselves or improving on their own strengths and weaknesses. Let me start with what are my strengths I thought helped me to go to the places or to the positions. So one of the biggest strengths which I thought for myself was my ability to have a business common sense. Now, business common sense, we all use terminology common sense, but I am just adding business common sense. Most of the people, when they go into the job or they go into the profession, they try to become expert in their own area or in their own function without knowing what's happening in their business. So I thought business common sense is a limited capability with a lot of people, and I worked on that. So you should know in your business, in your organization, what's happening around, not only in your finance department or not only in your quality control department, but company as a whole. So I worked upon that I should know the industry very well. I should know my competitors very well. I should know what they are doing differently than what we are doing. So I applied a business common sense, and it's a continuous process. So that's one. Second very important aspect which a lot of us neglect or forget in a leadership or even in a strength point of view is the predictability. I always use this terminology in a different way, that whenever you appoint someone as a manager or as a leader or as a director, what the management or what the bosses or what the company want a predictable behavior from that person. Now, if your behavior is not predictable, then there is a problem. For example, there is a labor strike in a company, in a manufacturing unit, there is a labor strike. And if the organization is not sure how the leader will handle the labor strike, that's unpredictability, and which creates a problem. So predictability is another strength which I worked upon. Third, a very, very important thing which I sort of say that's my own creation, I call it cultural competence. So I worked in different industries, different countries, and lived in different countries. I developed my own model how you can be culturally fit in any organization, in any place. And it's not that easy. I can give an example, like when I went to Middle East, I learned Arabic. I spent a lot of money on learning Arabic, but that's still easy. I'm a vegetarian guy. I ate the camel meat when I was in Middle East just to understand how the culture works. So cultural competence is one area which I think is very, very important in today's globalized world. And this is my strength, or I have developed on that. Other than that, the last one, of course, there are many, but one of the other thing is that you need to think out of box. What I'm trying to say here is that you need to add value to the organization and not to your own department. What happens, we all come with a framework that I am only responsible for my department and I don't care what happens. So when you start adding value to the business as a whole, that's the one area organizations and people start looking at you. And I think that was one of my strengths.
Perfect. I really enjoyed learning about the culture fit, because not a lot of people kind of talk about it, right? Communication, especially important. If you aren't able to articulate what you are thinking, what you expect from people, then there is mismanagement of stakeholders, right? On the weaknesses side, right? I'd love to get your thoughts in terms of, everybody has weaknesses, but do you work on how much time do you spend, and to what level do you overcome your weakness, or should you even do that? Because I'm a big fan of strengths-based approach, right? When I'm coaching anyone, I typically first start with the Strengths Finder. It's such a simple but effective assessment tool that by the end of it, you kind of say, oh, well, there's an aha moment. This is something that I knew, but now I know.
Yep.
Right? So would love to hear your thoughts on your views on weakness and how do you approach it?
No, it's a good question. And being a coach, I understand from where you are coming and what's the strength-based approach. When I started my career, obviously, I was more focusing on my strength. But what I realized over a period of time that it's not only my strengths which are going to help me, but it's also my weaknesses which are pulling me back to an extent. So I'll tell you very classically, I used to spend 70% of time on enhancing or developing my strength, but 30% of my time I was looking at my weaknesses and what can I do. One classic weakness which I can tell you it happened with me, I was originally a finance guy, a CFO type of material, but I was very weak on technology side. When I say technology means that was the time when all these ERP systems, SAPs and Oracles, they were not there. What I'm saying is before them. So accounting softwares were coming, ERP system, and I was the guy who was not very good at that. And when I did a 360-degree feedback with my own team, I realized that all of them rated me lowest on the technology side. And that was the aha moment in a different way for me. Oh my God, this is like, and then I started working on. So what I'm trying, you have to identify what are your weaknesses. You cannot keep putting your weaknesses under the drawer, under the table all the time, because sometimes it's going to hit you.
Right.
So this was the one technology. Second way, to be frank, very openly, is my biggest weakness was I was very emotional at some point of time, because when you come from, depends on what cultural background you come. So I used to get emotional in the sense I was not crying but I used to take decisions with emotion. And how to separate the emotions from the business, that was the big thing for me, which I learned in a very hard way. And that was another weakness, which took me a lot of time to work upon that. And of course, my coaching later on helped me on that, but that's a later part of my life. So weaknesses are important. You cannot forget your weaknesses, because over a period of time, those weaknesses become bigger and bigger and bigger, and may stop you at some point.
At Dasar, we also work with companies to help them identify so there is a law of minimum. I come from chemical engineering background. Was part of the fertilizer business, my family business. And over there, I learned the concept of law of minimum. So when plants are growing, right, it is out of the 12 to 15 nutrients, it's not necessary. You can keep feeding 2 or 3 nutrients excess to it. But if one other nutrient is deficient, it's like a leaky bucket which has strands to it, right? And so till the point you add that nutrient to that plant will not be able to give you the yield or the harvest that you're expecting. And I strongly believe, we are in the process of writing a white paper on this, where we are saying, humans operate in a similar way, and there is a law of minimum.
Yep.
And that weakness could be the weaknesses that you said, which is technology functional.
Yep.
It could be mindset.
Yep.
But it could also be situational.
Yep.
What I mean by situation is, say you are really good at what you do, but if you don't have the financial independence, or you don't have the physical fitness, the mental fitness, the resilience, then that becomes your point which doesn't help you propel to the next orbit.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is essentially what we are working.
Absolutely.
We've covered a little bit about leadership and also your strengths, weaknesses. How do you view it? Right? I want to focus on one of the key aspects of Dasar, which is, productivity and performance, peak performance.
Yep.
How can anyone be in the top 1% in their field of work at what they do?
Yep.
And you'll find top performers around the world, right? And I love to understand, I'm very curious of what makes them the top 1%. So you're a coach, you're working with some of the best people. You've worked previously and managed people who've been great top performers.
Yep.
Can you give some examples or share your thinking on what does it take to be top 1% in your field of work?
Thanks, a very interesting question, and I very often come across this type of questions, particularly when I coach the leaders or when I coach the senior management team. I'll tell you an analogy here, or maybe a theory here. You must have heard three-legged stool theory. Now, I have applied this three-legged stool theory to the question what you asked me. So a three-legged stool, if you need to balance that stool, there are 3 legs. All the three legs must be of the equal strength, equal height, equal weight, and everything. It's not like a four-legged stool.
Right.
Balancing is difficult. So in a three-legged stool concept, and answering your question of best in class or 1%, one leg of the stool is your functional expertise. Second leg of stool is the technology applicable in your domain as of that point of time. And third one is your emotional intelligence. So those people who want to be in 1% of that category of whatever they are doing, they need to first ensure that all three legs of the three-legged stool are equal strength. It's not easy. When you become an engineer, you are functionally expert. Let's say you're a chemical engineer, you got functional expertise, you got good marks. That's fine. But how that engineering knowledge is being applied in your field, whether you need to understand which type of software in today's world, whether you need to understand data analytics, you need to understand, for example, CAD, CAM, or I don't know, Python. So what is currently happening in your industry as far as your functional expertise is concerned? So that's what I call technology domain driving that functional. Right. So that's the second stool. And third stool, which is neglected by all or most of the people, is emotional intelligence. We all come with the belief that if I got a good marks, if I got a good knowledge, and if I know the computer applications and all those things, I am done. But it's the third aspect, which is emotional intelligence. How do you manage your own emotions, and how do you manage or influence the emotions of people around you at any point of time? Typically, most of the leaders spend money, time, efforts on first two legs of the stool. Third leg of the stool is always neglected. And that's where is the problem. If you want to be in 1% or best in class, there are three simple things I would say. One is, whatever you want to do, try to do best. For example, you want to do MBA, do an MBA from good university, not any Tom, Dick and Harry university, right? If you want to do, for example, let's say, chartered accountancy course, do from good chartered accountancy firm where you will get good knowledge. Right. So that is one aspect. So try to be best in class when you are doing your education or your basic things. Second thing is, you have to keep learning all the time. We are being taught that you become a doctor and engineer and that's it. You will get good wife, you will get good money, you will get good house. Never happens like that. You have to keep learning all the time. So learning is a process and it's a lifelong process. So that's the second one. Third very important thing is that you have to enjoy the small wins. Every small achievement, you need to be celebrating that. And that's what we don't do that. We always keep I want to go to the Mount Everest, but I'm not able to climb the Baner Hills also. So when you climb the Baner Hill, celebrate that success. First step is, so celebrating small steps, that's very important. If you do all these three things on a continuous basis, not once in a lifetime, I think there are very high chances you will get into the top 1%, top 10%, whatever you want to say.
So you're talking a lot about compounding, right? And that's where we use a tagline, which is consistency over intensity, right? Do the small things, the right things again and again, and give it time. As long as you're consistent, you will achieve or move closer towards your goal.
Absolutely.
Right? And now that leads me to my next question. Time management. Okay, this is such a... So everybody has fixed amount of time, 24 hours, 7 days, 365 days, probably a 100-year life. Right? In today's world, 80 to 100 years, depending on which place you are at. And so time is always against us, it seems. Right? People will use excuses not to have fitness, to manage their health, their wealth, their personal finance. I've seen quite a lot of folks, spend 20 hours at a job, but not necessarily on these other things. So as an executive, former leader yourself, and today a coach, I'm sure one of the big aspects of coaching is time management. So, I read this stat that an average person today is on a device almost 11 hours a day. And on social media about 3.5 hours a day. Which means our 24 hours are now even shorter. So my question is, how can people manage their time better?
So this is the most difficult question, and during my coaching I very often come across this problem. But let's go to the basics. You made a comment that time is against all of us. First is, I do not agree to that. Time is with us. It's not against us. We are going against the time. That's the problem, really. I always say time management is a arts, science, and commerce. We need to understand time management is a creativity. Time management is art. How to use your time is very specific to you. How your friend uses his time and how you use your time is different. So it's art according to me.
Right.
It's obviously a science because there is a number of hours, number of minutes, number of seconds. So it's a science, right? And you know, time goes ahead, it never comes back. So again, theory or whatever, I don't want to get into science. And most important is time is money. We all make this comment, right? I charge now on the basis of half an hour.
Right.
That's commerce for me, right? So time management is arts, commerce, and science. But most important, my biggest concern today, Darshan, is that we live in a community, we live in a society where wasting time is a culture. And that's a big issue according to me. No business school, no management accounting course, no school teaches you how to manage your time. Right. That's another biggest limitation of our education system. The basic skill of life, which is time management, is not taught anywhere, right? So that is another problem. Other important aspect of time management is, according to me, time management is a mind game. You know, how do you manage your time? If you are able to manage your mind, you are able to manage your time.
Right.
You need a lot of persistence, you need a lot of commitment, you need a lot of discipline if you want to really manage your time properly. And from where it is going to come? It's going to come from your mind.
Right.
And you know, mind is the most difficult animal to tame.
Right.
And that's what, I'm not going into my psychology side, but mind game and time management, they are directly related. People, listeners to this, please understand that you need to first control your mind. If you are able to control your mind, you are definitely able to control your time. There is a very important principle of bounded rationality. I hope you would have heard it. The bounded rationality principle is again developed by one of the Nobel laureates, economist. What he says that whenever we take any judgment or any decision, we are bounded by three things. That's the bounded rationality concept. And the first thing we are restricted is the data available on your hand or the information available on your hand. There is a limit, right? Even though you are living in the industry 4.0 and all those things, there is a limit to data you can study and read and get into. So that is one limitation, the data information available on your hand. Second limitation is the time available on your hand. You cannot keep on taking decisions. For example, someone want to go somewhere and the flight is tomorrow at 10 o'clock. You have to go at tomorrow at 10 o'clock. There is no option. So time is limited. Whenever you have to take a decision, you have to take a decision within the given time zone or given time bound.
Right.
And third, which is very, very important, is again, according to me, is related to time. It is your cognitive ability. How much you can keep on thinking. And that's where the famous word called chemical locha comes from Sanjay Dutt's movie, that your brain, your mind has got limits.
Yeah.
You can get fatigued. So that's the cognitive limitation. So three things, one of them according to me, again cognitive limitation is again related to the time. Because in a day you can think, but now looking at your question, you are telling me that people are spending 11 hours on the social media or on whatever, on a electronic device and another 2-3 hours on social media. What is going to happen? So time management is a very, very important aspect, and I really request all the people, my every single client, I take a session on time management with them, whether they like it or don't like it. It's forced upon to them.
So it's interesting you say this, because so we offer online courses. These are do-it-yourself courses, but the difference is I come in as a coach once every 2 weeks. And this course is just a week-long course on time management that we offer, and in which it's a question of priority and what will bring meaning or fulfillment to you, right? So that's the approach that I have used towards time management. But I love this analogy that you've just used. One of the things that I notice is a lot of people, when you are saying, it's a mind game, you need to be disciplined. There is a really good book, As a Man Thinketh. Right? And most people actually say when you get up in the morning, you should read this book because it sets the tone for the rest of the day. So just on that part of discipline, how do you instill discipline? Because by doing it yourself, sometimes we don't succeed. And that's where coaches are so good. But what has found you success with the people you coach to get them disciplined?
Oh, that's an interesting question because I always say time management is very easy to talk, but very difficult to put it into action.
Right.
What I do, I'll tell you. First, when I get up in the morning, I draw my day plan. Before I have my tea, coffee, breakfast, my day plan is ready on a simple piece of paper, not on a computer. I'm still an old school of thought. I take a nice pen and paper and pencil and write it down what I'm supposed to do. Second thing is in the place where I sit in my office or in my desk, there is a whiteboard there. I either put it there or put it on a white piece of paper. So two things are there. Second thing is I keep on talking to me that I have to achieve this much work today. It's my internal commitment to myself. I have written down this plan, but am I committed to do that? That's the discipline part, right?
Right.
Another interesting aspect, which I always give an example of Marshall Goldsmith, and you know I am a Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder certified coach, executive coach. Marshall Goldsmith, the world's #1 coach, still have a person, his secretary, who calls her every day evening for 15 minutes and asks him the question, what have you done today and what were you supposed to do today? That's discipline.
Accountability.
Accountability. And that is at the level of Marshall Goldsmith, which is ultimate.
Right.
He is doing this for more than 20-25 years. You can listen to his podcast, YouTube videos. So if you think your mind is not controlling your time, you take external help. Exactly. Who is stopping you? Ask your wife, ask your girlfriend, ask your dad, mom, anyone. Please ask me the questions. And that's how you manage your time. And when you go to the bed in the evening, before you go to the bed have a reflection. What you are supposed to do and what you have not done. Give some rating. If you are supposed to do 10 things, you have done only 5 things. Don't eat sweet that day evening. You have to penalize.
Right.
It's not only, so it works in a both ways. It's a carrot and stick, you know.
Correct.
And this is a discipline you have to follow consistently lifelong.
Yeah.
You cannot say that I will do my time management only on Mondays and Tuesdays. Rest 5 days I am going to watch IPL match. I'm sorry.
You know, it's very interesting you say this. When I started Dasar, you know, one of the focus was what differentiates Dasar from everything that's out there. It's simply that I am your accountability buddy. I am your accountability coach who will push you, ask you, force you, if you allow me to, so that you are accountable on your fitness, on your money management, personal finance, and on your performance. And that is the single biggest difference that we are trying to do, where we are saying we will keep you accountable.
Yeah.
I have sent, so we just completed a 3-month, 90-day Get Financial Freedom program with 13 participants. Now these are very successful people. They are running businesses. They've worked at Microsoft for 10 years, right? These are the kind of people who are having trouble managing their money.
Yep.
And these people have said, Darshan, can you just nudge me on a Sunday morning and to say that finish that personal finance exercise for this week. And it's amazing, you know, just that little nudge, that little one hand holding or a push, or I'll even go down to their level of their calendar and I will say, you see you don't have time, let's look into your calendar. I will make time for you for this activity. Why? Because this is important to you.
Yes.
You have said it's important to you. I haven't. Right? My job is to make sure that you are doing what you have promised to the group.
I just want to add one more thing, because I still think time management is one of the most neglected aspect of our life, human life, all over the world, but in India too much. One is, I used to say when I used to be in managers, and I was when you go for a meeting early, you are wasting your time. So for example, you call me today at, let's say, 11 o'clock, and I'm sitting there from 10:30, I'm wasting my own time.
Right.
If you go for a meeting late, you are wasting someone else's time. So I'm wasting your time. But I'll give you an example, real life example. So I was in Singapore as a group CEO, and one of my company in India, I appointed a young man as a whole-time director on a listed company. And I told him, this is your best opportunity. You know, he was young, around 40. First annual general meeting of the company, shareholders meeting, you know, listed company, dividend declaration and all those things. And this guy is a whole-time director. So he's a managing director. Right. 10:30 was a meeting in one of the big hall in Chennai. His first meeting as a shareholders meeting, and he was a director for 6 months, 4-5 months. He didn't turn up to the meeting on time. Imagine what would have happened. I don't want to say openly here, but he lost his job within 3 months. That's the importance of time management. If you do not respect your commitment to your work, and whatever it may come through time, it may come through whatever it is, it's bad.
Yeah.
And this poor guy, he lost his job only because he was not able to come to the most important meeting in his life on time. All the board is sitting, chairman is sitting, I am sitting, everyone is sitting, shareholders are waiting. But because of legal provisions, I cannot start the shareholders meeting because full-time director is not there. So he just lost the job. And he never got that big job till now. So this is commitment towards the time is very important.
Sunil, I want to talk about a very important topic, right? We have the youngest population in the world, India.
Yep.
We have God knows how many million new people joining, youngsters joining the workforce every year, right? Leaving job creation topic apart, right? I'd love to understand, for someone who's entering his or her first job as an undergrad, as a postgrad outside the MBA, what advice would you give them? Right? I'd love to get your thoughts in, what would be the guiding principles for them?
Thanks, Darshan. Really, this is very important and very relevant to today's young generation. Typically, we call Gen Z or millennials. And there are a lot of issues around that. And unfortunately, people don't discuss this very openly. So good question, and let's start with that. One thing all the young graduates or whatever postgraduates who are coming into the job market, they should know very well is that no job is a permanent job. That's the first thing they should know that. If you are going to work in a private sector, and nowadays even if you are going to work in a government sector, performance is the key. So be prepared for that you are not going to work in one organization for 30 years or 35 years. The average lifespan of corporates companies is reduced from 90 years to 16 years.
Right.
Over the last. So no job is permanent job. Be prepared for that. You are going to lose your job at some point of time. Are you ready for that? So that's one thing. Second thing, whatever you are going to learn is in your first job only. Now when I say learn is so many aspects in that, but what I'm trying to say is you must be committed in your first job. First job is not a speed dating. That's my terminology. Do not look at first job as a speed dating, that I'll just go here, spend time and then move on. No, that's not. Learn as many things as possible in first 1 to 3 years. Psychologically, the brain, maximum ability for you to learn is when there is a novelty effect.
Correct.
And that novelty effect in your life has come just now. Why do you want to kill that? So that's another important. Always remember, whenever you get a first job, it is because of your intelligence quotient and not because of your emotional quotient.
Right.
You get a job because you are qualified engineer, you are qualified MBA, you are qualified chartered accountant. So functional expertise is tested and you get into that. But always remember, your first promotion is not because of your IQ, it's always because of your EQ or emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. So try to learn things, working with people, working around people and all those things. When you work in a first job or when you work in an organization, try to work under the team and stay away from the politics. Very important. Organizational politics is very dirty. Don't get into that. I use the word I preach. If you want to do the politics to become a CEO of a company. Otherwise, don't do it. and you have to keep learning. Means try to move as many departments as possible in your first job. Spend extra hours. Travel. Ask a lot of questions. Very, very important. If you are not asking the question, you are not learning anything. You cannot find the answer to a question by going onto the Google. I'm very sorry, but this is if in an organization, for example, you have a problem in your production line or you have a problem in your sales and marketing department, you cannot find the answer on Google search. Ask questions, make people angry with you by asking the question. Curiosity is very, very important in your first 5 years. And of course, enjoy the life.
Yeah.
Don't take it a pressure that I have to become a manager within 1 year, I want 25% rise in second year. No. Enjoy the work, enjoy the process. And like I said, celebrate the small wins and then learn how to work with people, behave with people, talk with people. I think if you do these things, no limit.
So I have two things to add to this, right? I recently did a podcast where I got fired and it was the best thing that happened to me. And
Yep.
this was me getting fired back in 2013-14. And you can go and see what it was. But absolutely right, there are situations life is going to throw at you. And so you need to be prepared,
Yep.
right? And you
Yep.
need to be prepared psychologically, personal finance standpoint,
Yep.
and capability standpoint,
Yep.
right? So I think it's very important to be capable enough to be
Yep.
able to wither out 6 months so as to be able to get hired again
Yep.
in something that you like. The second story that comes to my mind is my own first job. I got very lucky. I was placed out of, after chemical engineering, out of campus in a company called Praj Industries in the bioethanol sector in its heydays.
I know.
And the month that I joined, in that same month, my supervisor and his supervisor joined another company. So I came directly under the vice president.
Yep.
And the vice president was one of the most gifted technical person I know and one of the best managers I've had. So what I want to highlight is the importance of getting a great manager or a great boss in the first job is very important. What made him great was A, accountability, and two, making me grind out hours and hours and work that my colleagues couldn't even do for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? I was doing stuff which was at least 2 or 3 years ahead of my time.
Yeah.
And that kind of just propelled, right? He pushed me to the limit, but I accepted it and I put my head down and produced.
Yeah.
Right? My job was to do and not to focus on politics or the money.
Exactly.
In the first increment, I was just handed an increment. I didn't even negotiate. There was no negotiation. There was no expectation.
Yeah.
There was just, all right, is given, that's fine. And those numbers were very minuscule, right? So I think those were the two stories that kind of come to my mind so that was a really important topic. The third thing that I would add is reliability. I have been teaching I've been a visiting faculty at various institutes and taking different courses. And one of the biggest challenge that I see is dependability, reliability, right? You may not be the best in terms of capability, competence. Just be reliable. Just be someone who the other person can, if the job is done, can trust you that job will be done. Right? I think that part needs to be just focused on a little bit as well. It can't be just, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, right? Do the job that is in front of you. You're contributing in some way and eventually it will pay, right?
So, no, absolutely. And one more thing I'll just add to that, Darshan, is that during your first job, try to identify your hero or try to identify your role model. Because when you're working, that's a different category. Now you are in the corporate world. Who is your role model or who is your hero? Try to think on those lines. And I always say that first job is a job where you identify who you would like to be coached by or who you would like to be mentored by. Now, this is a long process we will discuss in next few minutes maybe, but I think that's the time you start thinking who is of my type of person or who I would like to become. That's one thing, you do that trial and error.
Correct.
At that point of time.
Brilliant. Now, my next question to you is, you're a Marshall Goldsmith certified coach.
Yep.
You're undergoing certification or you're an associate certified coach at the ICF.
Yep.
You've done advanced management from University of Oxford.
Yep.
And a plethora of other things. What I see in your career is continuous learning and certification. Maybe you can help us understand, what is this continuous development and what is it that you're hoping to achieve with all of these, right? I just want to get into your mind and approach for continuous learning and development.
So it's a good question. It's a combination of a lot of things I will try to explain to you is, see, I always believed that we save money for buying something. Like for example, I want to buy an iPhone, I'll start saving the money. I want to buy a good car, I start saving money, or I want to, buy a good property. How many of you save money to go for a external education or new thing to want to learn? I'm coming from that school of thought. I will save money for my education. Now you will say, Sunil, you are looking very old. What about you? You already achieved it. I'm still learning.
Right.
So I want people to understand that education, learning, skill enhancement is a continuous process. Age is not a limit there. So think on that line. When I started my career, I was a good management accountant, a lawyer, and whatever, company secretary. But then I very quickly realized if I want to go and sit in that corner room, which was my dream, to be a managing director of the company, what else I need to do? So what I did, I will tell you, and this is what I coach a lot of people also. I create my vision for 5 years at a time. Every 5 years, I create my own vision. Who am I? Where I want to go, and what's my purpose? Again, coming back to the purpose in your discussion.
Correct.
I define my vision, then I map my qualification, my skills, my capabilities, my expertise. Even today, I do that. And then I see where is the gap. And the moment I see a gap, I go to do that course. I spend money on that. If you give me an option to go and buy a Mercedes or to go to Harvard, I will go to Harvard. I will not go to Mercedes. It's just giving an example.
Yes.
So that's the approach I have taken. And one of the things we all need to understand that nowadays is a new generation. You need to think of portfolio of careers.
Correct.
It's not one career you are going to succeed. One career may not make you last for more than 3 years nowadays.
Correct.
You see what happens with the people nowadays. So you need to create a portfolio of careers. Now, if you need to create a portfolio of careers, what do you need to do? You need to enhance your knowledge, your capabilities. And that's what I realized. For example, let's take a practical example. When I became a managing director of Indo-Jordan Chemicals in Middle East, I had no formal management qualification at that point of time. And my vision was at this age, I should become a managing director. I became 2 years ahead of that. So the problem was my skill gap analysis was ready, but action was not taken on that because the promotion happened much before I expected. So what? So I immediately decided to go to Oxford. I spent 20,000 pounds at that point of time, but money is not important. What I'm trying to say is that you need to understand that you are in a position of responsibility. You need to have, like if a doctor does a surgery and if he does not know how to do the surgery, what's going to happen, right?
Right.
It's the same thing. And you are doing surgery. I was working in a company with 700 people. If I screw the business, life of 700 people is under
Correct.
risk. So that is the approach I have always taken. I have ensured every 3 to 4 years, I revisit my career plans, my vision of my career. I change my career. You said you got fired. I ensure that I get fired sometime. Because if you stick in one position, in one job too long, and if you are not in that 1% category,
Correct.
you are of no use.
Correct.
So I was trying to balance both things. I want to be 1% also, and I wanted to be in a achievement also. So that's how it worked. And touch wood, after Oxford, I went to Aspen in Colorado, where I wanted to learn value-based leadership.
Correct.
Because I knew the corporate leadership side, I need to understand the social leadership, value-based leadership. Then I studied psychology. Now recently you told me about the coaching, my Marshall Goldsmith. I'm still doing a lot of things which I can't tell you right now, but it's a continuous process.
Brilliant. Continuous chiseling. And sharpening.
And
right?
sharpening. Yeah.
That keeps this interesting.
Yeah.
So Sunil, we'll get into the last section of the podcast. Now this is a question as a coach,
Yep.
right? You've been coaching few people, business leaders, executives and professionals. What is your philosophy for coaching and development? And how would you guide any professional through her career or his career over the next 2 to 3 decades? What would you like? What would be the philosophy underlying approach?
Coaching, mentoring, and counseling are 3 different things, and I do all those.
Correct.
So if you ask my model of coaching, I prefer not to define my model of coaching because according to me, every coaching client is different, and I cannot fit him or her in a box.
Okay.
I go with an open mind. My personal belief is that every human being is a leader. We need to empower him or her to be a leader. That's my personal belief. So whenever a person comes to me for a coaching, be a young boy or girl from a university, or be a CEO or CEO of a company, I ask them some basic questions. Why have you come to me? Why now? All those type of. So that we call as a session 0. So session 0 is asking a lot of questions to that person and identifying who he is, what he want to do, and all those things. Also in the process, being a psychologist at the back of my mind, I judge the person's ability whether he will change or not. whether he's really serious or not, or does he go through any personal problems and that's why he have come to me. So this is the standard coaching model which worldwide people talk about is a GROW model, GROW, which is formally accepted by most of coaches as a best model, which is basically you should have goals, you should know what is reality, right? GRO, what are the options available to you, and W is your willingness to do it.
Correct.
Now that is inbuilt in all our discussion, right? What I do differently is I see the mind of a person. There are a lot of people who come to me for coaching and they never turn after 2 sessions. I'm very happy with such people because I do not want to coach a person who is not ready to change.
Correct.
So what is important is ask him or her, what are your goals and what you want to achieve out of this. If the person is able to define, and I will help them to define that. It's not like that. Most of people don't understand what is goals. We talk SMART goals.
Correct.
That's very easy to define, SMART, but when you put it in reality, they don't know how to do that. So I'll help on that. But clarity on goals and clarity on you are ready to change over a period of time and commitment to spend time on doing that. If that is seen, I will coach anyone. I even coached once a boy who was selling books at the Signal. I saw a spark in the boy. The way he was convincing me to buy an English book, I was thrilled, and I got out of my car and I asked him to come and I said, can I help you? The type of question he asked me, I was shocked. So what I'm trying to say is that every person has got a capability to become a smart person, to become a successful person, to become a leader. And leadership or coaching is not prerogative of only select few MBAs or people who can afford.
Correct.
It's for everyone. So that is my simple philosophy of coaching. I ask people to come to me. I test them in first session, which may vary from 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on. Recently, I can give an example. I am coaching one of the founder, promoter of one of the largest conglomerate in Nigeria. And this guy is $1 billion, I can't name obviously. So he approached me and he said, Sunil, I want to get coached. I said, you are already $1 billion guy. Why are you coming to me? You should have hired someone much better than me or much, So he said, no, he speaks Hindi, not very, he's an old school of thought. So he said, no, I wanted to learn something from you only. So I took his interview for 2 hours. And in 2 hours, I realized that if this guy could have been coached at the right point of time, today his net worth would have been $10 billion, not $1 billion. And he knows that. So he said, I never had a right type of person to coach me. I'm not saying I will be the right person and he will become from $1 billion to 10. He may not. His age is not on his side now. But what I'm saying is that it's every person is different for coaching. What's his purpose? Why he or she is coming to be coached? And always very important that the commitment and discipline and respect a coachee and coach should have with each other.
Right.
If that's not there, you can't coach anyone.
And one of the things that I've experienced is most people try getting a coach, and at the first instance, it doesn't work out. And they just say, well, I don't need coaching, coaches don't work, all of that stuff, right?
Yep.
But a lot of people, they don't understand that you have to find the right coach. Exactly. And it is a discovery process.
Yes.
You have to test a little bit. You have to give it time.
Yep.
It's not like the first coach that you see is the coach for you. There is a bit of a frequency match.
Yep.
There is that respect, mutual respect. And a lot of things are at play at that point, right? And so encouraging that to make sure that, the first coach may not have worked, but that doesn't mean that is not, because all it takes is one coach to unleash that greatness, the potential within you, right? And so I'm always encouraging people, if it didn't work, why don't you try someone else, right? And there are really, really good coaches out there, and don't go by just what their credentials or background is, right? If you are at level 2, you need a level 3 coach. If you're at level 10, you need a level 12 coach, right? Something like that. And so build yourself up, give yourself time. My last question to you.
Yeah, just I want to add in the previous question is,
please.
Coaching and mentoring are the two things have been extremely neglected in our country. Whereas coaching, mentoring is very common in Western world.
Correct.
I was lucky to have good mentors to me at the right point of time. And again, I will request all the people who are listening to this podcast is, please start looking for the right coach or right mentor for you. And that's like you said, it's a long-term process. Wavelength need to match. Again, it's not a speed dating. It takes time, but once you identify a coach or a mentor, keep long-term relations. I still have relations with my first coach. His age, first mentor, I use the word, not coach really. His age today is 85, and he still tells me what's right and what's wrong.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
My last question to you is, you've been an operator for the last 3 decades. As CEO, as C-suite in different geographies and industries, companies. And then in the last few years, decade, what you've done is you've become an independent director.
Yep.
And then you're also a director at IMA.
Yep.
And I see a lot of governance, right? You're moving in the space of governance.
Yep.
Where there are some top performers, top leaders operating.
Yep.
And you're guiding or governing the operators.
Yep.
So can you walk through a little bit in terms of the transition of going from an operator to in the governance role, right? And what are some of the things that kind of were new to you or new are to you today? And what are the things that you really have to keep a watch on?
Oh, it's an interesting thing, and it's also part and parcel of my career transition every 5 years. What I said to you is that, so when I was sitting as a CEO, group CEO, managing director on board of companies as operating in charge or whatever you want to say, I was anyway exposed to governance. And I was the firm believer that you should be 100% on your governance, no compromises. But when I realized that it's not that easy to be 100% perfect on governance. So I started studying governance a bit more, and obviously my visit to Oxford for my advanced management program, my visit to Aspen University in Colorado, Aspen Institute of Leadership Management, that opened me a lot of new things which were not in my mind. So I realized, and being a qualified company secretary, qualified lawyer, I understand the legality part also of that. So one is compliance, and governance has to come from within, not because of compliance. So I could see that people go to governance only because under Companies Act or under so and so act,
you have to comply.
You have to comply. I was coming from the other side. Even though I understand this side very well, I was saying that you need to do the governance because you need to feel about society, community, giving back to the society and all those things. We talk today diversity, equity, inclusion. We talk ESG, environmental, social governance. All those things are important, and we have seen during the COVID time.
Right.
The companies and corporations who have helped citizens, communities, employees to survive during this pandemic, they were seen as a good company. So that's again a governance. So I decided to get into the governance somewhere around 3 years back. And as a plan of my career vision, I have decided at X age, I will get out of my full-time job. And it happened that I got out and then lockdown started. Cool. So it was good thing as well as bad thing. But now I sit on company's board as independent director. I sit on IMA, Institute of Management Accountants, world's #1 management accounting body. I am a global director. I sit on their nomination committee, strategic planning committee, leadership academy, governance committee. Also, I was there for some time. I learned governance in a very hard way, how the Western world looks at governance. But of course, problems of governance were also very big in Western world. We know all Enrons and.
Correct.
So I created a sort of niche. I'm not saying I'm an expert in governance, but whenever I get an opportunity, I ask the people right questions on a governance side.
Right.
And then I started liking that area of governance. And then of course I did a lot of study on governance in last 2 years. I studied different governance policies and procedures in Europe, in America, in India. And being an independent director, naturally it comes to me also that when you sit on the board. So I started liking on that, and I do now advise boards on governance. Whenever I sit on a board of a company, I first ask them questions on the governance and then on the performance and profitability and dividend, which they don't like.
Right.
But that's the approach I am taking. And very important is why all this has happened. We all know Maslow's need theory, right? Maslow's need hierarchy or need theory. When you start from the bottom of the triangle, you go with basic needs and food, shelter. Nowadays, Wi-Fi, internet connectivity is a basic need. But I was looking at the top corner of the self-actualization of the. So that is your esteem, your self-actualization, giving back to the society and all those things. So I saw that is the area where governance is very closely related. And that's how I got into the governance. And I'm still learning, still trying to learn a bit more on that, and hope I will add value.
Brilliant. So this has been an awesome podcast. We've talked about coaching, we've talked about governance, we've talked about how do you become the top 1% globally in your field of work. What should any recent graduate, anyone who's at their first job, be thinking, approaching, doing? You may or may not agree with 100% with what we say, right? But the idea is this podcast is about bringing different perspectives so as to elevate our mind, right? And so when you have colliding perspectives, you will hear or know things which you may not have from that viewpoint. And I think there is value in that, right?
Yep.
And I guess that's one of the aspirations I have of doing this podcast regularly. So Sunil, this has been an absolutely mind-blowing podcast. Thanks a lot for coming on this. Hopefully we can continue, getting benefit of your experience and expertise going forward.
Thank you very much, Darshan, and I really enjoyed the time spending with you. And thanks again. Thank you.
Thanks.